Welcome to Transcending Comics, a podcast dedicated to trans representation in comic books, manga, and webtoons, both on panel and behind the scenes. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming queer horror thriller comic, Sink to the Top, now live on Kickstarter. We're lucky enough to be joined today by the creative team behind this incredible book as well. Returning to the show is comics writer and editor Joe Corallo, who you may remember from last year's episode celebrating the works of Rachel Pollack. He's also the writer of the recent King Arthur and the Knights of Justice graphic novels, as well as Beckstar, She Said Destroy, and short comics and anthologies like Sharp Wit and the Company of Women, and Young Men in Love, New Romance. Also joining us is an up-and-coming artistic talent in the comics industry, Chase Bluestone. Chase is an experienced artist, colorist, letterer, and character designer, and he's previously worked with Joe on short comics like Gal Gallant and Boys Will Be Toys from their previously mentioned Kickstarter anthologies. He also illustrated the children's storybook, Tickle Trouble, and has an impressive backlog of variant covers, pinups, and art prints you can find online. With all that said, I'd like to welcome to the show Joe and Chase. Welcome, guys.
Hi.
Hello. Hello, I'm Chase. Thanks for having us.
Glad I could finally have y'all on, and yeah, so excited to see the initial progress so far of Sink to the Top. Seeing you're already about a third of the way funded, and only 24 hours into the campaign?
Yeah, we got a backer. We got one. We were at 30 and we got to 31 in between getting ready to go live.
I'm sure I can find some way to take credit for that.
Sure.
So we're in the first 24 hours of the campaign. Can you tell our listeners anything about the book as far as what it's about, and just get them excited to back the book after they hear this episode?
Sure. I will start and then Chase will run with it. Chase will run with it. It's funny because Chase. So, yeah, right. See, people like puns, right? It was almost a pun. Anyway, so Sink to the Top, like you're saying, it's a queer horror thriller. Takes place in the 70s. It's about a young male escort who has previously been in a precarious situation with some wealthy men who views these sort of people as objects, who then is in a position where he can make some money, good money, doing another gig like this. And he thinks, because he has survived this previous experience, that he knows what he's doing, but nothing can possibly prepare him for what he's about to experience.
Chase, anything you want to add?
I don't know. I love his spiel. He's so good at this.
You did a lot of research in the 70s and stuff. So
I did do a lot of research. This took me very interesting places. This is the most research-heavy project I've ever had. It's, fashion, architecture. It's been really rewarding connecting to the past like that. I knew this was a period piece early on, but I didn't really see that coming because I've never done something so involved. I've looked at floor plans of mansions, and I've looked at furniture. It's been very interesting.
So to clarify, done research into the 70s, not you researched this personally in the 70s.
Oh, yes, of course. I wasn't there for the 70s.
Yeah, I was going to be shocked if so.
That said, we watched a lot of John Pertwee Doctor Who in the past couple of months or so.
We have been.
Which number is that?
3.
That's a little painstaking research if you ask me, but...
It's not that bad. I think he might be my favorite.
He's really good. Him and Joe Grant are so great together. And then Sarah Jane joins at the end, and you get the first Centauran story, which has Jeremy Bulloch in it, who was the first Boba Fett in Empire Strikes Back.
You're catching me at the most educated on classic Doctor I've ever been, which is not very educated, but I did just track down the Grant Morrison Doctor Who magazine comics in a trade, and so I got a little bit of 6th and 7th Doctor exposure, but still, I couldn't tell you anything about the ones before the guy with the scarf.
I could go on and on about Doctor Who, but yes.
Now, you're already watching Doctor Who together. You've made a couple comics together before this current project. So tell me, how did you two first meet and start collaborating?
Well, we were at the same DivCon in like the end of 2018, right?
It would have been October 2018.
Yeah. And then we ended up talking and like realized that like, oh, we were both at this thing. And then like we had started connecting more in like 2019. And our first collaboration was the Deadbeats anthology that I co-edited with Eric Palicki. And I really liked Chase's art. So I was like, hey, like at that point, we more or less had like the anthology together, but I was like, hey, there's room to do like a pinup. So, we were able to get Chasen for a pinup, which he did on Rachel's story. Rachel Pollack and Richard Case had a story together, and Chase used that as sort of inspiration. And yeah, I'll let you chime in with your end of it if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, like it was really fun. It was nerve-wracking. Of course, it was my first foray into indie comics, even though it wasn't even a comic. But like Joe's been really good about telling me that it counts. It's true. I'm in a book and it matters.
Yes.
And it's always fun to see it on a shelf sometimes at like a bookshop and go, hey, I'm in that.
So, working your way from that through your short comics and anthologies so far, where did the idea for Sink to the Top come from, and how did that end up taking shape as a full 24-page one-shot?
So the initial idea, I had talked with Rachel Pollack about just like talking about her time in London, and she had shared a story about this story she had heard from someone about this higher up guy in conservative politics in London, and his whole spiel was he would get these sort of male escorts, and rather than sleep with them, he would like hire them out to kind of like come over for like dinner or something like that, and then would just tear them down like mentally and emotionally. Like that was like his bit. And then it was just this like horrifying sort of like experience. And I was like, what a cool like villain kind of thing. Well, what that would be like great. So I was like, well, I just thought to myself, like, that's such like a cool like start or a hook of a story. It'd be really interesting to do that in I have it set in New York. It's very loosely based, like it's its own sort of story, and it's a fictionalized event, but just this idea of this sort of young guy like walking into a situation that's like, of course he's not going to be prepared for, because like who would be prepared for something like that? So that's really what inspired it initially. But then, and I'll let Chase run from here, I also very specifically wanted it to be inspired by late 70s, early 80s comic art, in particular, the work of Gene Colan on Tomb of Dracula and Frank Miller's Ronin, which I personally think Ronin might be Frank Miller's best laid out comic. I don't know if it's his best comics work, but in terms of like layouts and like being like really like going for it, I think Ronin might be the best. And Chase read not all of Tomb of Dracula, but read a number of things that like Gene Colan was working on, as well as Ronin. And I'd love to hear what Chase has to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, like those Ronin layouts, they're tough to beat. They're bold, they're unconventional, they get the job done, they cooperate with the art in unexpected ways. And as someone who's been in comics for some years now, I love a good layout. I think that, like we could pay a little more attention to layouts lest we get trapped in a 9-panel grid constantly. And that combined with, so like Ronin has the layouts, the really interesting stuff, and the Tomb of Dracula stuff is like compositionally the way the individual panels are laid out. It's so full of dread. It's so full of foreboding. They're very spacious, even though sometimes some of those panels can be really tiny. They're very grand. They have a grand sense to them. So those were kind of the two elements I was trying to combine: the layouts and the individual panel compositions for Sink to the Top.
Now, I'm pretty unfamiliar with Tomb of Dracula, other than knowing that like Blade comes from there. So for those that want to give the book a shot or like just kind of study it for its panel layouts, do you have a good starting point or any individual issues you'd say we should hop into?
This is a Joe question.
No, it's tough. I mean, there isn't really a bad place to start. I mean, there's a continuity to it, but just like Bronze Age comics, like in the 70s, it's a bit different. You can kind of jump in and out. Like it's all done in a way that you can dive right in. And especially because the way it often works with Marvel, like volume 1 isn't necessarily in print all the time. Like you'll have these dead periods where things are just in and out of print. What I would say though is if you can find a copy of, it's out of print, but sometimes you can get them cheap, the like Marvel Essentials, which are in black and white. You just get like a big phone book size thing of like Tomb of Dracula, and there's should be a few of those. Gene Colan's art, black and white, crazy. It's so good. So I definitely would recommend going about it that way. Also, like Gene Colan did a lot of Doctor Strange, and some of those epic collections are in print. That's really great. And his Batman stuff. And I think they're putting out a DC Finest collection soon that's sort of just like 2 years or whatever leading up to like Crisis that Gene Colan would have done some work on. But absolutely, he's one of my favorites. You know, Rachel Pollack was a big fan too. I believe she's the one who said, I'm trying to think if it was her or someone else had said, nobody draws a hand going for a doorknob like Gene Colan. And I just love that about him. So yeah, look up Gene Colan. Especially if you're a Marvel fan, definitely the Doctor Strange, the Tomb of Dracula stuff. But especially I would think Doctor Strange if you're like more of like an MCU specific fan. And then if you're more of a DC person, go for, you know, his Batman stuff. It's so good. He's done some interesting, like there was a Scarecrow 2-parter that he did that's like so creepy. Just phenomenal artist, doesn't get talked about enough. You know, who has since, you know, he's passed some years ago. He did do one issue of Captain America, at least one while Ed Brubaker's run was going on. So like he did make it into, you know, this century, but not talked about enough. And I wish people would acknowledge the greatness of Gene Colan more.
Now, with Sink to the Top, I've seen you mention elsewhere that this one is going to be a standalone one and done story, but that this could be the beginning of an anthology of other like similarly themed queer horror stories. So do you have anything that you can tell us now about what we might expect from this line of comics going forward when this book does well?
Well, thank you. One of the ideas, you know, we've talked about, I'll mention one and I'll let Chase go for it, but previously talked about doing a story that was like a 50s greasers kind of thing called like His Tragic Love, but it's a world where there's like only like one gender. It's just like men. And
Yeah.
and so it's just like greasers and their boyfriends, and like, but there's also like drag queens and stuff like just a weird sort of quirky thing, because we had done Gal Gallant, which was basically a world that it was just women. There's no men in it at all. So like just like playing around with like those kind of like concepts and doing things like that. You know, if we did something like that, it would probably be more of like 3 like 8-page stories, and one would be like that greaser one, and then we might do one where it's, you know, like there is no gender, you know, like just kind of like playing around with some different ideas and like little snippets like that. But we also have some other ideas, so let Chase go with that.
These are so vague. I don't know which one is best to bring up. Well, I guess the most relevant one to Sink would be where we've been tossing around the idea of doing like a Catholic guilt giallo inspired thing. We haven't really hammered down like the concept yet, but we love giallo. I was raised Catholic, and that's interesting to me.
Same
and
here.
like
I was raised Catholic.
yeah, and slapping some queer themes on that is just we simply must do it.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah, no, that's it's high on the list, but we love Giallo. I mean, I'm a big fan of Argento. In particular, Argento, Fulci. There's a lot of other like maybe slightly more obscure giallo that I also really love, or like other movies that are like almost giallo. But like one of the ones we watched, we like just found it on Tubi. It was The Red Queen Kills Seven Times.
Oh my God, I love her.
That was so good. Like early 70s, like female slasher, like just great stuff. Same thing with a woman in a lizard in a woman's skin. It's like early, like, lesbian horror sort of movie, which is great. Like it kind of opens with like this woman running through just like a sea of naked people, and then lesbian stuff happens, and you're just like, well, I mean, you have my attention, I guess. Let's see where this goes.
I will admit I only recognize like half those names in passing, but my film buff girlfriend is going to be really excited to hear this episode now. So thank you for throwing those in there.
Yeah, no problem. One, two that we have to watch soon that I have seen, but it's The House with Laughing Windows. That's like a slow burn one. I'm a sucker for a good slow burn. So it's very moody Italian town, and things like there's like a murder or two that happen, and like it really ramps up, and then the end just goes like completely off the rails. I love stuff like that. So
I really loved your previous collaboration with Boys Will Be Toys from the Young Men in Love anthology. And I thought like the whole Toy Story inspired love story seemed like a perfect project for you both. But with Joe's experience working on action figure franchises and his love of Raggedy Andy, and I'm imagining a setting like this gives Chase's character design work a place to shine. So I'd like to know how you two came to pair up on that particular project and like how that story took shape from there.
Well, I'll start you up here. It was we had been talking, and we're still going to do it at some point, but we don't have, the rights, so it would just be a fan comic, probably like maybe like a 2-page like Raggedy Ann and Andy like fan comic.
We're big Raggedy heads.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love it so much. I think I watched the pumpkin that couldn't smile like almost every Halloween. It's so good. I have a Raggedy Andy cell from like the 80s cartoon because I used to watch that as a kid. And there was also like a Wizard of Oz cartoon. So you are actually born gay. I don't know, like that's that's just a thing that happens. So that was like, it was in my mind of just like, well, we want to do this comic, but we can also like do something that's like kind of in that same vein, but a little different and, get paid for it. So I had that sort of idea so that one of the characters, the Farmer Franklin character, is very Raggedy Andy. And then I will let Chase take it from here.
When we first started hanging out, pretty much all we watched were trash tunes. I don't know how that came to be, but like I think of myself as a tune head, and like he's a child of the 80s and 90s, and it just felt kind of natural. And like we have all these like ideas, and we're just constantly watching cartoons and thinking about cartoons. And the other lead, Ricky Rifle, or is it Rifle Ricky? Yeah, it's Ricky Rifle, right?
I believe so. I have the book. I could check.
But yeah, he's clearly as Farmer Franklin is inspired by Raggedy Andy, Ricky Rifle is clearly inspired by G.I. Joe. And we kind of treated it, like a homage to 80s and 90s trash tunes because we love that stuff. And it just made sense. We wanted to do something light, something that can be funny, amusing. Like the gay Toy Story pitch is really easy to sum it all up, but like toys, like everyone was a kid once. Everyone has toys. It's really easy to look at these characters and kind of relate to them in a way. And even better if you like trash tunes and are nostalgic for them.
And if you're nostalgic for Jim Henson's the Christmas toy, because we have a reference there with Meteoron is like a gender bent Meteora from Jim Henson's Christmas toy, which I grew up having that on VHS as a kid, so I watched that a lot around Christmas. But I don't think a lot of other people did. I've had one person reach out to me being like, "Is this a reference to like a Christmas toy?"
You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, Jude, who was at the signing.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, but
underrated, honestly.
Yeah,
Jim Henson.
Really like yeah,
I'm sorry, I did not know Jim Henson's Christmas toy, and I just Googled it right now, and I just see a little like Raggedy Ann looking doll with the soulless killer eyes.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a really cocky tiger stuffed animal in that.
Yeah, going from the image of him, I see you were right. People are just born gay.
It's true.
Going off your work so far, like Chase, this is your first full-length comic, correct?
Correct.
So with a project like this under your belt, now like some serious comic experience, do you have any idea what's next for you in your comic career or what you are looking to do next? Like, do you want to do more indie books or are you in the market to try and work on licensed characters?
I could go either way. I'm pretty happy making comics. But I guess if I had to go a specific route and I had the choice, I would like to work on more mature themes. I love horror. I'm a big horror head. I like really gritty queer tales and from a queer perspective, because I don't think we get that enough. We don't like bury your gays trope, but also there's much more stories to tell about queerness, about history. So I guess that kind of puts me in more the indie side of things. But I'll take a license gig. I love cartoons. If someone wanted to get me on some sort of like cartoon revival graphic novel, sign me up.
What did your artistic career look like then before you started getting into comics? Like, I know you had the children's book with Tickle Trouble, but anything noteworthy before that?
I did a one-pager for my college magazine once. I did, mostly stuff through my college and like commissions. Like that pinup in Deadbeats was really like my breakout thing. I spent a lot of time in school. By and large, like more like expressive, cartoony stuff that's what I really like. And I'm just hoping to do some more of that.
Joe, in the time since your last appearance on the show, I know a very well-received second volume of King Arthur and the Knights of Justice has been released.
Thank you. Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with the book and like what direction you've been able to take this series with the second installment here?
So for the second installment, to backtrack briefly, the first installment, we more or less knew what it was going to be like out the gate. Like it was basically like it was a reboot of the show. So we really wanted it to have sort of a beginning, middle, and end, because if there was only going to be one volume, we wanted to make sure it was all done. So I basically updated the show more or less to fit one graphic novel rather than 26 episodes and more, because they never wrapped up the show, because it had things that had to, like, it had different MacGuffins to keep, which is what you want in a show where the idea is to try to get to over 100 episodes and just have it on syndication forever. It's not conducive to a graphic novel. So for the second volume, since we basically told the full reboot and like that's the story, they really let me go wild with it, because like Morgana's in the present and it starts with her like jumping out of a painting in the British Museum and like messing up some security guards and stealing her crystal ball back and stuff. Like that's like the first few pages. And then we introduce a lot of Arthurian lore. I add the Grail, the Coin of Necromancy, King Lot and King Lot's Castle, some other characters throughout. I introduced the concept of the Lady of the Table being in the present day and like things like that. So it's kind of bonkers. I really loved putting it together. And I really do hope people check it out because I really like that I got to go really nuts with it.
Now, what's it like to have this opportunity now for a show that was just like left open-ended since your childhood to like get to be the one that comes back and gives it at least more definitive closing point, or at least telling like the definitive next chapter for this story?
Yeah, no, it was crazy. I really enjoyed it, but like it's fun. It's humbling because you also like I never felt like, oh, they're letting me get away with this or whatever it is. I was like, I have this plan, I have this vision for what this is, and I can explain myself. And so sort of the way that like I try to look at this to keep like a healthy sort of mindset is like, this isn't my property. It is on me to convince them that this is within their property's best interest to do. And, if I don't get to do something, that's okay, because these aren't my toys. I'm like going over a friend's house and playing with their toys or something, it's like, it's different, but honestly, they were cool with everything. Like, I didn't get any pushback at all. I had to clarify some things, but I ended up doing exactly what I wanted to do with this volume. But that presents a different problem, which is then if people don't like it, I can't be like, oh, well, my hands were tied. I was just doing what, they told me to do. I just have to be like, oh, you don't like me on a deeper, more personal level. But like, it's fine. It's fine.
Chase, I was enjoying reading through Tickle Trouble ahead of this interview, and I wanted to ask about what your experience was like drawing a children's illustrated book and how you would say that's compared to the comic making process for you.
Yeah, for sure. So to start, I should acknowledge that the way that Ladderworks, my publisher, produces books is I'm sure it's very different from, more established publishers. It was a very small team, like the CEO of the company, Shreyas, he's awesome. But like he's wearing a lot of hats. He was like, he's like the big boss and the art director, and he came up as a cartoonist. So I was working mainly with him, a writer and an editor, and we would get on Zoom calls, once a week from start to finish. Like I got the script, and then it was like, okay, like let's start character designs. I do a bunch of development sketches. They'd tell me which ones they'd like, and then I develop the ones they like, and they'd give me notes on it. And it was very fun. Like I said before, I love a lot of styles, but naturally, what comes to me easiest is the cartoony stuff. I definitely had to adjust my natural inclinations to be more suited towards toddler. Basically, I've never drawn for toddler before, so like there was a lot of feedback about like the softness and like how friendly the faces were, and like make it like cutesy but not exaggerated. I tend to exaggerate a lot, and just like making sure the color notes were good. The main color of the book is yellow, so everything had to kind of cooperate with that. Now I have that language in my repertoire, which I like to have, because I've struggled with the idea of having a signature style, quote unquote. But I'm learning that having range is actually better. It gets you more work if you can say yes to more jobs. And I've drawn all over the place, like I've imitated like like a Jack Kirby style, and now I'm doing this. I'm doing Sink. I studied a lot of styles for that. I can paint realistically, so yeah, just work like it was a lot of working together to develop the style, and that was really fun.
Do you have any plans for further children's books in the immediate future, or are you sticking to comics for now?
Not in the immediate future, but like I am in contact with Ladderworks. I've met some of their other artists. I've met their other writers. Like I would definitely be down to do it another time because it's, it has its own set of challenges. But I think what I like about Picture Book is the fact that there's so much space and you could do really nice, large illustrations. There's a lot of spreads in there, and there are some kind of panel like layouts in that book, but it really lets you lovingly render something, and people are going to look at it because of the nature of the format. So yeah, I would definitely do that again.
Joe, I was actually just re-listening to your last appearance on the show, and I was surprised to hear you actually mention Chase way back then.
Yeah.
Specifically that you had plans to eventually watch A Scanner Darkly and the original Superman the movie from 1978.
Yeah.
1 year later, have y'all had a chance to check out either film?
We did watch the first Superman movie so far.
Chase, what were your thoughts?
It was nice. I like him.
He's a nice guy.
He's great.
Yeah.
This is my first episode I've recorded since the new Superman movie came out, so I would at least like to get y'all's thoughts on that.
Sure. I saw it opening weekend. I really, really liked it. I think the guy playing Superman, David Cornsweet, Cornsweet, yeah. He was great. I really liked him. I loved Lois. One of my biggest problems with it, but this has been a problem with a lot of like recent, like all the Superman movies of this like century, really. They really cast the Daily Planet well. But then, like, some of these big names they get for characters, like, Steve Lombard and Perry White in this, have, like, a dozen lines between the two of them over the whole movie. And I'm just like, you cast, like, really good people, and we barely get to interact with them.
There are a number of YouTube shorts with the Daily Planet cast that have been a lot of fun, so glad they squeezed a little extra content out of that.
Yeah, no, for sure. You kind of have to. Because I liked it, a lot of my tweaks and things are more granular, like, and I know like the way like people discuss movies and stuff. I feel like on podcasts and social media that like when people say something like this could have been better, it's like, why'd you hate it? And it's like, no, I didn't. I'm just saying, like. And I know this is going to sound like such like a like why are you even saying this? I'm like, I needed one more scene with Ma and Pa Kent. I felt like we were one scene short on really firming up that relationship. And just Clark's relationship with Ma and Pa Kent is such like I don't know if you could say it's the soul core of Superman, but it's absolutely like one of the like defining things of Superman. And I was like, I know the annoying thing is to do anything I'm saying, you would have to bloat this movie's runtime by like 20 minutes to fit it all in. And then everyone, and possibly including me, would also be like, that went a little long. So like I get that, but like that, and I do like, I wish this Lex was a little different because there's different ways to interpret Lex. There's no way to be like, I'm not being like, that's not Lex Luthor or anything like that. But again, this is granular. I get it. But like, he was like a little too close to the kind of Lex we got from Zuckerberg, like the Zuckerberg kind of Lex in, like Batman v Superman and all of that. And I just want to be so far away from that stuff that I was just like, I wish he was like a little different kind of Lex, but that is potentially completely moot because, I don't think this is really a spoiler, but like we might get Lex again in a future movie. And characters sometimes change and grow over time, especially when they're in multiple, sort of movies. So we are getting an earlier Lex, because I think the movie out the gate basically says like Superman's been like around for like 3 years at this point. So like this is still early in his career. So to be like, I wish we kind of got like a bigger ego kind of Lex with gravitas. I'm also like, well, he also needs to grow into that at some, like he has to have a place to go if he's gonna end up potentially being in future movies. But yeah, it's so nice to see a Superman movie with a nice score, and it's colorful, and Superman's nice, and he's helpful, and again, I hope this is a minor enough spoiler that this doesn't upset people who, it's like at this point, I feel like you should have seen the movie to avoid minor spoilers. Like he saves a squirrel at one point, and that was kind of one of the best things for me in that movie. I was like, this is adorable. So I hope people aren't mad that I spoiled the squirrel saving scene, but
I regrettably have not seen the movie yet.
Oh no.
No, it's okay. That I was thinking like, do I have the time? But he saves a squirrel, so now I have to see it.
You do.
I wouldn't have known that if you didn't mention it.
But see, sometimes spoilers make people want to go to a movie.
And I mean, they get it perfect. And I say this because I saved a squirrel on the way to the movie of like the squirrel doesn't know what to do afterwards and has that confused omnidirectional scramble. Like one runs out in the street, I brake for it, and it just keeps running in front of my car. I'm like, a guy, I'm really trying here. My biggest takeaway, though, is that I did not expect that this movie would make me like Hawkgirl more than Jadzia Axelrod already did. Getting to see that scene where World Leader is treated justly by Hawkgirl, like that's going to make this movie worth every rewatch.
Yeah, no, there is that moment. Like, so it's funny because I think that you're on the same page here. So I'm going to say that, like, there were some people who were talking about how, like this movie is like not political at all, or like you're reading too much into it. But like, and I don't want to necessarily get people like worked up over things that are going on right now, but I'll just say, Superman, they push the fact that he's not from here, and they need the government. They need like private contractors through the government to take him to an undisclosed location, which is nothing at all like anything happening now. And there is a conflict going on in another part of the world that in no way reflects a conflict that's been going on for decades. So in that way, the movie is not political at all, I guess.
I'm really trying to avoid spoilers here because one of our guests today was not present for the movie. So like, I don't want to ruin the experience too much. We already gave them that squirrel gets saved. He's already seen cute dog in previews, and I don't know what more we could do to sell him on it.
Yep.
But bringing us to our closing questions of the week, got two options here. Feel free to answer both of them if you want. But to celebrate the second volume of King Arthur and the Knights of Justice, I'd like to ask what cartoon you would most like to revisit as a comic someday, either writing it yourself or just seeing it finally get a second life elsewhere. Or, knowing y'all are both trash tune heads, I'd like to know what cartoon you would say is the least in need of a reboot.
There's so many.
There have been a handful of cartoons that we've watched that have genuinely like been good, and we were like, why is this good? There was no reason for this to be good. Unlike the Little Shop of Horrors cartoon, which we've decided is easily one of the worst like Saturday morning cartoons that we've ever watched.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It dethroned my other least favorite trash tune recently when we were watching that. It was It was Barnyard Commandos. Shh, don't tell anyone.
I will say though, if it turns out the creators of Barnyard Commandos are big fans of your show and write in about this, let us know.
Will do. I bet I can jump through some hoops, or orchestrate the algorithm to get this in front of them. Just like, someone mentioned our cartoon. Oh.
But like we could fix it. I think Barnyard Commandos could do with a comic book revival. That'd be cool, right? We could breathe new life into it.
Yeah, no, we can save you. But like it's tough because like some of them are like, I don't know. One of the ones we've watched the most is the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. We might have seen more than half of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show.
It's possible.
Yeah. There was a period of time where we would like grab sandwiches and be like sitting in the car and just like watch an episode of that on the phone.
As God intended.
Yeah.
Did y'all get to the one where Mario comes on screen, the live action one comes on screen to tell kids that if they do drugs, they go to hell before they die?
Yes.
Oh, thank God.
No. Well, there is, this is insane to me, and it doesn't get talked about enough. There's an episode of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show where like the live action interstitials that like Cher is there, but she's like in hiding or something, and like she's like got something around like her face or whatever. So like obviously it's not Cher. They do that same exact bit in The Nanny.
With
and I'm
Cher?
like, yeah, it's with Cher, and they do the same thing. It's obviously not Cher, and they're like hiding her face and stuff. And it's like, did the writers of The Nanny rip off an episode of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show? Did that happen?
Wouldn't be surprised if maybe like one person happened to work on both shows and just thought they could slip that through. Like, no one here watched this. I can get away with this.
Yeah, it has to be something like that. But like in terms of a like cartoon that, so I have two cartoons that I think I would personally love to reboot or would love to see a reboot in comics. Just two off the top of my head. There's always more because I could go on and on about this, but I think these are two that are shocking that they aren't. The first one being SWAT Cats. Because I loved SWAT Cats. There have been rumors of like a SWAT Cats revival for years and years and years. I think they've come close in the past, but like something has blocked each time. But like SWAT Cats is like a graphic novel series or a floppy. Like I would love to see that.
Oh. Hey folks, just a quick editor's note here. The day after recording this episode, a SWAT Cats comic was actually announced. It's going to launch on Kickstarter in October, and even helmed by the TV show's original creators. Also, the previously mentioned Barnyard Commandos were picked up by Nacelle Comics earlier this year. The same folks doing the Biker Mice from Mars and RoboForce comics, and both of those have actually been great so far. So, despite our apprehensions on the show, we'll likely be eating our words about this one a year from now. And one last note, Joe and Chase's Kickstarter for Sink to the Top has just around $1,000 left to go before it reaches its goal, and a little over a week left on the campaign at the time of recording. If you haven't already, please show them some support and help them bring this book to life, because I promise it's going to be worth it. Thanks, and back to the show.
And the other one for me that I would love is Mighty Max.
Ooh, I've talked about this specifically with someone of like, I didn't get to see Mighty Max growing up, but I did have a hand-me-down Mighty Max Castle, and I feel like that's a franchise just ripe enough for like, it doesn't matter if you didn't grow up watching it, like that might actually be a help here, and just getting to do something very new with these like half-formed ideas based on these toys.
Oh yeah, no, and some of those episodes are pretty good. Like we watched like one of the ones that really sticks in my mind, and I was out with a friend of mine, Ivy, who was in town over the weekend, and Mighty Max came up, and I was like, oh my God, you remember that one episode where they like went out of their way to like really try to like kill Skullmaster, and they got like a group of like veteran warriors to like go with them, and like they died. And she was like, oh my God, yeah, like that was great. And it's like, it was crazy. I remember just watching that like as a kid being like, they get around it because they're clearly sacrificing themselves, but it's all off screen because it's jumping through portals and stuff like that. So like they stay behind as like the giant horde is coming after them. And you know, Max and them like go through the portal. So you don't actually see it, but like, yeah, they're dead.
Yeah, I don't feel like you see that enough in kids' cartoons of like the gang just being like, what if we just tried really hard to kill the big bad? It's always like, we'll just foil him next week again.
Which is here's another bone of contention I have with licenses in pop culture while I was growing up. How did we never get a Star Fox Saturday morning cartoon?
Ooh.
Right? It's weird.
It was like designed for that, where like every episode they'd be on like a new planet, and you know, you have like, you know, Star Wolf and like his other guys is the guys that like they stop every episode, but like we'll follow them to like the next town or planet or asteroid belt or whatever. Like it felt like it was made for that, and they never did it. I should have been watching a Star Fox Saturday morning cartoon with my Star Fox action figures, and Nintendo and the powers that be robbed that from me.
Like just a slight repaint of like knockoff Star Wars toys, and you have the whole action figure line right there. Like that's shocking that we didn't get that. I'm with you there.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think the one I'd say least needs a reboot is specifically the Beetlejuice cartoon. Like after that recent reboot movie, which is maybe the most a movie has ever offended me in its last 60 seconds. Where it's just like, forget the rest of that movie. This was about PTSD this whole time. See ya, folks. Like, I don't.
That was crazy, and like, I don't know. Like, did you also feel? I don't want to make accusations. I think you're going to know where I'm going with this as soon as I say it. But like, the Soul Train bit was kind of awkward, right?
Yeah,
it was like a little, and like again, like I don't necessarily want to throw around accusations, but it was kind of like this. Why this joke, and the way it's being done just kind of felt like, I don't know, was a little off. Maybe I'll settle on off. It was off, right?
Yeah.
Thank goodness you're here. I didn't want to be the one to say it.
No, yeah, I'm like, I don't want to like, because like implying something's like intentional or has like ill intent or something. I'm like, I'm not saying that, but like it's,
you know,
right.
Maybe it's a callback to like the Banana Boat song being like kind of problematic, but also one of the most interesting scenes in the movie. Like,
yeah, which it absolutely was. But yeah, it was. I was just like,
But since we're talking about it, the Beetlejuice cartoon has aged surprisingly well.
It really has.
That does shock me. I didn't think the cartoon where they pair someone up with the guy that's trying to make Winona Ryder his child bride. I did not expect that to age well.
Yeah.
As you might imagine, they drop that angle in the cartoon.
Completely.
Huh. That is just gone. They are just like friends, which also not great. I get it. But like, oh no, this middle-aged man and this like high schooler girl are just friends. Yes, I get that. But they like do interesting pop culture parody kind of things. Like every episode's like, it's a Robin Hood episode. It's an Indiana Jones episode. It's a like, I think the Robin Hood episode is the one with the bard who goes around, like it's a bard with like a player piano that he's like rolling around, and like the song he's like, he ends up going back to is just like, it's trap, it's trap, it's trap, trap, trap. And I mean, I've used that on and off in D&D since I was in like high school. So I mean, that alone, I think it's aged great.
I think I'll always be a little bitter that like we got the most bland like member berries reboot of a movie with Beetlejuice when for once I wish it was a film adaptation of a musical, because we could have just gotten Beetlejuice the musical in theaters and introduce a whole new fan base to that. I think we'd be better off, even if they did butcher it like most musical movies tend to do.
No, I'm with you. I do wish it was better. It was one of those things where I'm like, I don't regret seeing this, but I never want to see it again.
Mm-hmm. I'll forget it in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And like William Dafoe just didn't have to be there at all. Like he ended up doing nothing. It's like, that's great. I like William Dafoe. He seems crazy in movies, which is what you want him to be. But like, except for Mississippi Burning. Yeah, Mississippi Burning. He's really good in that. I feel like we don't talk about that enough. But, and like Beetlejuice, it's like you just paid William Dafoe to just say lines that have really nothing to do with the movie and end up being completely inconsequential to it.
I could not have told you Willem Dafoe was in that movie. That has completely left my brain. And I saw that movie this year.
Danny DeVito's in that movie. Remember Danny DeVito?
Oh, yeah. Oh, poor guy. You don't deserve that.
Right.
I would like to wrap this up. I don't want to take y'all's entire evening here, but are there any other upcoming works y'all want to make sure you get to shout out before we go today?
I also edit. So the trade paperback of Green Hornet Miss Fury, which I edited over at Dynamite, which was written by Alex Segura and Henry Barajas, with Federico Ceresa on art. That should be coming up soon. I know the Diamond fiasco with the distribution, all of that has been going on, is like gotten resolved now. So like I don't know the exact date, but you could check online and see it's been adjusted to. If you want, it's 5 issues. Federico Ceresa's art is incredible. And I know he's already talking with other publishers and more with Dynamite and stuff like that. So you want to get in on the ground floor with this guy. He's like, it's very Greg Smallwoody. So like he's going to blow up. Get in on him now, so that way you can be all obnoxious about it in like a few years when he's on like a really big book. So
will do. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to come on the show. I'm looking forward to the success of Sink to the Top and can't wait to get my hands on the finished book. But
thank you.
For our listeners that would like to follow your work and also support the campaign, where can they find you both online?
I am on Blue Sky at Joe Corallo, JoeCorallo, and on Instagram at Corallo Joe.
And I am on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram at Chase Bluestone, just like how it sounds, no underscores or anything.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. If the listeners at home have requests or recommendations for comics or creators you'd like us to cover in the future, you can send them our way on social media. You can find us on the Transcending Comics Instagram and Facebook page, on Twitter, a site you should leave as @TranscendComics, or you can find me on Blue Sky as @TommyTrimbath, or email us at transcendingcomics@gmail.com. I'd like to thank you again for giving our podcast a chance and give a special shout out to Ray Day Parade for designing our logo. Our intro and outro music this week is A Little Soul and You've Been Starring by Carlson. You can check out more of his music on carlson.com. Join us again next time as we continue transcending boundaries and exploring the colorful world of trans, non-binary, and genderqueer representation in comic books of all kinds. As the curtains fall on this episode of Transcending Comics, remember that comics have the power to inspire change in countless worlds, including our own. Keep reading, keep writing, and keep transcending.